Welcome to the Brag Effect, where we share easy to understand customer service tips from business owners and leaders that will help you get your customers bragging about you in all the right ways. Hi, I'm Mike Wells, and together with my co-host Michelle Adams. Hey Michelle.
Hi Mike.
A big thanks for joining us.
Really excited to be having a conversation today with Brent Claremont. Brent is a fellow Aussie. He grew up on the northern beaches of Sydney before attending Macquarie University, where he studied a Bachelor of Commerce, majoring in marketing. After uni, Brent worked for a healthcare publisher called Australian Doctor. This is where he really found his passion for customer relationships and the overall customer experience. Due to his passion, he was lucky enough to be poached by HubSpot, where he worked for just over 6 years. HubSpot was opening their first office in Sydney at the time and hired Brent to be one of the founding members of the customer success team. He saw the office grow from 20 people to over 200 people, and then opening 3 offices in Sydney, Singapore, and Japan. So huge growth. The second half of his career at HubSpot, he actually spent over in their headquarters in Boston, USA, which is where he is today, where he was then an onboarding team manager. And in 2020, due to Brent's amazing team effort, he was awarded the global top performing manager at HubSpot. Amazing achievement. Recently, Brent has joined an e-commerce conversation company called Emotive as their director of customer onboarding. Emotive recently had their Series B for 50 million and is currently valued at 400 million US dollars. Let's jump into our conversation with Brent. Hi, Brent. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
So you've just moved to a company called Emotive.
Yes.
And previous to that, you were with HubSpot for 6 years.
Yeah, a little over 6 years in Sydney, then half the time spent in Boston as well. So it was a great 6 years. Absolutely love HubSpot.
So it's nice to be talking to another Aussie.
Look, it definitely is. It definitely is. But on the other hand, I do like being a bit of a special snowflake over here in the US. My wife is an Aussie as well, and she's working at a company now called Toast. And I think she's one of 3 Aussies there. So it definitely has its benefits.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what we want to kind of talk about today, and obviously your experience at HubSpot and now Emotive, is very much in a digital platform product space. So, just walk me through your thoughts on the challenges as a SaaS product or digital product offering to customers today. And you would have seen the landscape of kind of customer experience changing over the last, 6 or so years. What's in your experience the best way to connect with your customers when, it's not like you're seeing them on a daily basis? So yeah, really keen to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, of course, Michelle. And I think it's interesting, right? Because I've spent probably 10 years of my career. I started off in media, so print sales, the way of the future. So I definitely had a lot of that old school mentality of, I think my targets, which I love my initial job in sales, that kind of kicked up that passion and desire for excellent customer experience. But I think I had to do 28 face-to-face meetings in order to get my commission for a month. So that's just sort of giving you the groundwork of like the old school print mentality that I had. Then joining HubSpot, this rapidly growing software in the SaaS industry, was just absolutely crazy. And to see going from like a print publication where you can, you feel it, you can hold it, you can see it, versus something that is completely online and digital was a bit of a shift for me. But to your question, like, how do you build that brand loyalty and experience with something that's completely digital? HubSpot have done it in such a great way. Emotive has as well. I think the standard that a lot of SaaS companies, especially in the US, have just set that bar. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these amazing companies just have this fanfare that I've never really seen before. Like, people love their brands and logos. So to give you a specific example, thinking of HubSpot, oftentimes I see individuals who are customer success managers, common title for an account manager in software, really go above and beyond for their customers. So I can think of one specific time there was a customer we had at HubSpot, and they had their firstborn daughter, I believe. And we went out of the way to get all the swag, all the collateral, just those like nice touches that takes a little bit of extra effort, and sent them like a HubSpot baby onesie. Again, something really, really small. In the customer experience, that means so much. If I'm a customer, I have a plethora of different SaaS software to be using. That little extra touch really builds that brand loyalty, and that really trickles onto reviews on G2 Crowd, Google reviews as well. Like, all these things are coming into place that individuals can really see what's out there. And HubSpot was definitely one of the best I've ever seen at building that brand and that loyalty with their customers in a special way.
So that's really interesting. So what you're saying is the little kind of touch points along the way that make all the difference. And so it's such a competitive landscape now, isn't it?
Yeah.
When it comes to what's available in that sense for us to choose from. So to build that loyalty is really important. And it's not just meeting expectations, it's going over and above with the little things that make a difference.
I completely agree. That's it.
And so do you find that, different people have different levels of expectations? And do you feel that rewarding different levels of membership is also something that you would encourage?
Yeah, definitely. It's so interesting because depending on what market that you're in or what software that you're working for or you're looking to purchase, there's always going to be different levels. I mean, the reality is, I'd love to live in a world where all customers are treated as equal, which they definitely should, but depending on how much someone is spending. So if you look at a company like Salesforce, for example, you could have some small 1-2 man, woman shops who are just having great small businesses, and they're probably spending 1% of the really, really massive enterprise businesses. So you have an absolute huge difference in regards to annual spend. How do you treat those customers the same and give them that extra special TLC? So some companies do it really, really well. Other companies that are growing may find it hard to prioritize those customers. But again, the standard, like you said, is so high. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, HubSpot, Pardot. I could keep naming all these different companies, but the level of service is just so phenomenal these days. And I think that's now the expectation of a lot of consumers.
Yeah. And so the other thing too is just thinking about the community that these brands have built. Not so much obviously the loyalty, but the community that it gets behind them, and they've shared the journey kind of the whole way. And, in your view, what's a really good way to build community to really get that sort of brand loyalty?
Yeah, I love that question, because when it's coming from a company sort of building their own brand and pushing things forward, you're like, of course I'm going to expect to hear this from the company telling me that you're amazing. But that social proof is just so important. And one thing that HubSpot did in a brilliant way in Sydney when we were growing that region, I think I was one of 3 team members who started in Sydney that were part of the Customer Success Foundation. So it was 1 to 3 of us in the first days. And then we grew from a total company of 30 people in APAC to now 200 today, over 3 different offices. So I sort of saw that growth in JPAC, which was really, really nice, versus the US where there's thousands of employees. One of the best things that I sort of build that community is actually including customers and agencies. So HubSpot partners would be a great example. I could name so many that were the absolute best, like Search and Be Found, like an agency called Brand Manager that's now called Salted Stone Australia. Syncs is another brilliant one. I could really keep going, but they ran events outside of HubSpot. It was branded with HubSpot, but it's kind of a cute name, but we called it Hugs, but it was a HubSpot user group. So we had hugs set up all around Australia, and it wasn't run by HubSpot. It was by those partners who would then bring in prospects, their customers and fellow agencies to run them and talk about the inbound marketing methodology, to speak about the HubSpot culture and why people are using it. And I think that is the social proof that really, really helped. And I think HubSpot still has a long way to grow in Australia and so much more opportunity. But that was something that I found really special. Even just sitting back, I was like, oh my God, look at all these people turning up here and HubSpot isn't even doing it. the agencies are spreading that culture and that loyalty themselves, which is in turn helping them grow. But it was something really, really special to watch in Sydney as it was growing.
And I love that hugs. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm just having a little hug this weekend. It was very, very good.
So, I mean, that's really interesting because it's almost like, you think about how hard it is to grow a brand these days. But if you, with the partnerships and collaborations that you have, can just have such a faster opportunity to reach more people. And so how much control, I guess, in terms of the protection of the brand did you have to have at that point? Or was it was really organic?
Yeah, I think because we've seen a blueprint in the US. The US have done it. They're a mature market. They're several years ahead. I'm trying to remember what the exact population is, but the US, I think it's around 330 million people versus Australia around 27 million. So just the sheer size of the population and the market being more mature. So we had a blueprint to run. Of course, Australia has its own specific needs. And I think having like a US grown playbook and an individual trying to run it from afar didn't really work. Once we had grown our own marketing team to kind of build the collateral, know and feel how Australians do it, it helped a lot more. There always has to be a level of, if you're holding an event with the logo, with the brand, there does have to be a bit of management there, of course, but everything that I saw was very organic and very grown. I don't think it was heavily policed in the early days, but we selected just great, passionate people who were excited about growing business. So luckily it worked out from what I saw in APAC. Yeah.
And did you find, because as you said, it's a very different market here in Australia, did you find what were some of the differences from what they had learnt in the US versus Australia? Are there as many early adopters? Are we a little bit more conservative? Yeah. How did you find that?
Yeah, it was interesting because as part of HubSpot, at the time, it's now in Singapore, but they'd fly every employee to do new hire training in Boston. So a lot of people, especially for me, it was my first ever big trip overseas, especially for business. So you can kind of get to feel the culture and see it. And walking around, I remember when I was going on my first day, I sort of had my HubSpot shirt on, like a new hire, which was great. And a random person stopped me in the street. They're like, "Oh, you work for HubSpot. That's amazing," in America. And I'm like, "Oh my God, this brand must be massive." Come back home, people are like, "Spot Hub? Like, never heard of it. I have no idea what it is." So like that brand loyalty hadn't been grown. So there definitely were some challenges. I think a lot of the meetings were done in phone, like very over the phone, in the US, whereas in Australia, like meeting your agency that you're onboarding was just so important. And those little cultural nuances, again, face-to-face meetings are massive in America too, of course, but just the way the scale was so much bigger in the US. In Sydney, when we were growing it, you could have that more person-to-person touch, kind of not micromanage isn't the right word, but you can
Building
have that fun.
Yeah,
exactly right. You knew every single person who was holding it and you knew their first names. So it was a bit more of a slower growth, but just the face-to-face events, they were the biggest in Australia, I'd say.
Yeah. Awesome. So just coming back to the, memberships and the connections that you build, I know that, we are like, do you often get a second chance as an example? So once a member onboards, and it'd be good to talk about some onboarding tips from you as well. But when members are on board, they test the product. Like we're not very patient, are we? Like we're just, if it's not giving you what you think it's going to give you and your expectations aren't met really quickly, we often don't come back to give it a second chance. So what are some of the ways in your experience that are really good in terms of making sure you make that first impression? I guess this goes for any business, not just a software program, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit on two of the biggest parts there. One is time to value and patience. I don't know about you, but I am pretty impatient most of the time. So if you want to get my attention, whether it's, over text, which we can talk about later, or if it's going to be through inbound content, you need to get my attention really, really quick. And in onboarding, the alignment between sales and the account management part after the trial, after the onboarding is just so important. So I think to your point on Time to value, super important. You need to show me the value of this product, this software really, really quickly, because I have 5 other competitors out the door that are begging for my attention. And that level is just so, so high. So completely agree. We are impatient beasts and we want to be shown value. So that time to value is very, very important for any onboarding, for any software. What's it for me? And the other point you said of setting those expectations, probably my most used phrase is resetting expectations. Historically, there's always going to be friction between the sales team and the onboarding team because that's how we're incentivized. Sales need to hit numbers. It is a tough job month in, month out. Onboarding often get phrased as, bringing everyone back to reality. So there's that natural friction of sales. Not that I'm saying I used to be in sales as well. I know some brilliant salespeople, but sometimes customers, I know I do this as a customer. I hear what I want to hear sometimes, and then it's up to onboarding to say, well, actually, we can't do that. Or no, we're not going to be doing all the work for you per se. So you hit the nail on the head in regards to how do we set excellent expectations in sales so it's a smooth process to onboarding. And when onboarding's finished, they hand you over to your longer term strategic point of contact. 3 different teams, 3 different goals. That's probably some of the biggest challenges that I typically see in any software company. And it's like dating. You have a bad first date, most likely you're not going to go back. And it's just like that. Getting a second chance is super, super tough. So you've got to get it right the first time.
Yeah. So in terms of onboarding, I know that there's certain steps that need to be taken to deliver the promise for the product. Because we are impatient, often sometimes we like to skip those steps, but they're really important as part of the journey to make sure that, the company can deliver what they're promising. In your view, what do you find is critical in terms of the little magic steps that you can make in the onboarding process that help guide the customers along the way, but is still easy to navigate? So that user experience, what are some of the tips that you would share?
Yeah, I need to rewrite all these tips myself after starting a new job and make sure I can rewrite them. But it's a really tough job. And one of the toughest things I find in onboarding, and I always found with all the team members that I worked with, and when I was in onboarding myself, is saying no to a customer. That is so tough. We have a prospect, we have a customer that's looking to work to us. Maybe they were too busy. Maybe they didn't do those setup steps we needed for this first call. So we're already a step behind. It's so hard to push back on a customer, a paying customer. And I think that expectation of this is a partnership, the analogy that always gets thrown around, which is a very famous one at HubSpot and most onboarding teams globally, is, think of us like your personal trainer in the gym. We're here to coach you on good form, but you need to lift and know how to use the software to get the return. So if that mindset is done very well by sales, that can flow into onboarding. But you hit the nail on the head again. If you don't do some of those key setup steps, then it gets harder to deliver that magic touch in onboarding. So sales, being brilliant, setting excellent expectations, then onboarding, being that partner. One of the phrases I heard from a sales rep a long time ago that I definitely stole and started using when I was onboarding was, I want you to like me, of course, working for HubSpot, working for Emotive, wherever, but above most of all, I want you to respect me as a business partner, because my goal is for you to see return. In order to do that, we both have to work together. And that almost set a tone for what onboarding should be. It's not just a one-way street, it's a to and fro partnership. And that, to me, if someone has the confidence to build that relationship in onboarding in the first week, the rest is still tough, but it's a lot easier to achieve and show that time to value.
Yeah. So you've mentioned now quite a few times you've been talking about that, sales versus onboarded member. The personal connection of speaking to somebody on the phone for the company, is that always kind of just like a one-on-one for you? Because there's so many products now that we can sign up to online where, some people don't want to speak to anyone, and do you really need to speak to somebody? And I know myself, if I've signed up to a system, and then you get an email, a day or two later saying, book a call with, a specialist that can help you use the system. Sometimes I actually don't want that. So but what I've heard, which I feel like you're quite consistent on, is just getting them on the phone. Is that right?
It really depends, Michelle, because at times I even find myself, if I'm not in the mood, I don't want to speak to somebody. I just want it to be all perfectly automated. And yeah, I'll just do this at my own pace. And I get a bit of coaching, whether it's in an article or a nice video showing me exactly what to do. Sometimes I'm in the mood for that. If it's a bit more of a bigger purchase, I want to speak to someone. I want that real white glove custom hand holding. So you can kind of see that high touch, usually where the money is a lot higher if it's an annual contract, or the expenditure is it's just a bit higher, versus that low touch model, which I think a lot of companies do very, very well, of no sales interaction. It's all completely automated, and you can test a trial for yourself and say thank you or no thank you. Those models are absolutely brilliant. Spotify, great example. Netflix, great example. No salespeople used. But then you look at the bigger deals, nothing is going to ever replace a very, very good salesperson with excellent communication as well. So it really depends on the product and what your needs are.
So I might jump to that point on how to build a customer-centric business, and because you've mentioned a lot the importance of the synergy between the sales and the customer service team. So what are some of the ways that you've experienced throughout your career on some really good ways to build a customer-centric business?
Yeah, I think there's two main things that I highlight. I mean, the relationship that you build with sales is super important, that we did very well at HubSpot, and what I'm seeing here at Emotive, and that is when you're a smaller group, you can build those personal relationships. And then the other side I'll quickly touch on is, again, it's so fun. I'm trying to think of how to actually explain it, but we'll start with the first one. When you build those relationships with sales, it's super important. When we were scaling in Sydney and we were 30, 40 people, I knew every single sales rep. We were all good mates. And if they sold, not saying they sell a bad deal or they didn't cover something or it didn't come up, I can go over and have a frank conversation with them. If I didn't do something in onboarding that they promised, they can have a direct conversation with me. And it was on the floor. And obviously in a remote world, it's more important than ever to have that relationship with sales, but being able to push each other, give each other clear feedback without being defensive is just making for a very smooth sales process. In Sydney, that was brilliant. We knew everyone, we were all growing together. In the US, it was still at a very high level for HubSpot as an example, but there were thousands. There were so many teams. That alignment as you scale naturally just gets so tough, and the details fall through the gaps. So that's definitely one part. And now I remember the second part is definitely around instilling people with the ability to do their job. Emotive, HubSpot, there is no micromanagement. People are really built from the ground up to design and build their own solutions and just be entrepreneurs, basically. And one phrase that I still remember to this day, solve for the customer. I know it sounds a little bit cliche perhaps, but everyone at HubSpot had that mentality of what do I need to do to solve this problem for the customer? Sales, onboarding, the customer success team, everyone would literally say that several times a day when we're having a conversation. And I mean, Dharmesh and Brian, who built HubSpot, founded HubSpot, they instilled it from day one, and it is woven into the fabric. Everyone says it. And I think that's starting from the beginning and growing right. If they didn't do it well, then they'd be kicking themselves down the track because it would be near impossible to change. So they set that expectation and that culture up nice and early.
And so how did they do that though? Like from day one, like, you know, what was some of the like specifics on how they did ingrain that into?
Yeah, I wish I was a fly on the wall when it first came out, because I think HubSpot, I've been around maybe 11 or 12 years now, and I think I joined halfway through just after they went public. Like just missed taking them public. But even when I came on board, it was obviously clearly there, whether it was the Dublin office, whether it was the Sydney, Singapore office, like it was just built there. So they really did originate it. And I think what they did really well was when they decided to build the company, before they even knew what it was, went from inbound marketing to sales marketing software. Now it's a CRM company that helps millions of businesses grow. They always had that down, their methodology. So again, there's a phrase like almost like a credo that HubSpot goes by of heart, humble, effective, adaptable, reliable, transparent. And that's kind of like the core foundations of who you are at HubSpot and again, it all sounds like a bit silly when I say it out loud, but it was really true. You know, some of my best mates I ever met were at that company, and you spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your loved ones at times. So it was just a brilliant place to go and work. And I think they did that from such an early stage. It just organically shifted through that culture. Because it's one thing to say, okay, team, this is going to be our culture. let's grow to 400, 500 people. It doesn't work like that. You need to hire the right people with the same mentality that are bought into the vision. And HubSpot have literally had this done it so well.
Yeah, it's incredible when you're part of an environment where one, you feel safe. Two, you can really bring your creativity and passion to your work. And it's incredible how much more successful and collaborative it can be, rather than this hierarchical kind of, carrot and stick kind of approach, which, we've so much evolved from, especially with sales organizations.
Yeah.
So,
I remember stressing missing targets in sales. And of course,
yes,
sales is naturally driven, but I totally respect the hustle and the hard work. And that's always never going to leave from any job. You have a performance metric to hit, but bringing your entire self to work and knowing that my manager, my team has my back, it just frees up that little bit of stress to focus on the job. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So I want to just come back to delighting members, or delighting your customers. So we did talk a little bit kind of about this, but I want to sort of flesh that out a little bit more. So to be that, what were some of the ways that at HubSpot you really sort of went over and above to delight members?
Yeah. So in onboarding in particular and in customer success, I think some of the best relationships that I saw getting formed with customers. And sorry if you hear that, just a thunderstorm rolling through Boston. So apologize about that. But one of the best things was really giving that catered consulting. So that's one side of it. And it's very easy to have a cookie cutter process. I'm sure you've heard of that many times, but customer A must do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 call, and then they'll be successful. Our customer success teams who I've seen at Emotive or at HubSpot would always go in and say, okay, this is X customer, this is their business type. Here are other examples that we've seen work quite well in the industry. And they would start to customize the onboarding plan, not change it all. But an example at Emotive today, we were looking at a prospect who's potentially coming on, and they had a deep knowledge of sports. And we actually had a team member who has a deep love and passion for sport. We never set the expectation that we can align that. But when we see that, we stepped outside of the usual processes to make that connection. And already the prospect's like, oh my God, I can have these deep discussions about someone who has this passion about a topic. So that's an example of that finer touch, which is a bit more hand-holding, but for the customer, it means everything. Or say someone's in education industry, and then a team member looks at previous campaigns, not in specifics. We don't share any customer information, of course, but knowing proven tactics for their specific industry, and they bring that to the call and show that they've done the preparation, it just goes such a long way. And I think that's one example of it. And then on the other side, it's just the quality of life things. Someone has a baby. Can you do something really nice, like a welcome gift? Someone had something bad happen in the family. Like, can we give them extra time? Can we show our love from the brand? And that's something I never expected when I first joined, but I've just seen time and time again. And it just is so important to people. Yeah,
that's awesome. So serving customers through chat and messengers. So, chat bots, and, we're seeing that so much more now. So maybe we can talk about Emotive and,
yes,
because that's pretty innovative, that the concept. Maybe you can share that with us, and then what are some of the ways that you can have, how do you build that connection through a chat or message?
Yeah, definitely. I'm more than happy to chat about this. And it's very exciting. Again, I'm very early in the stages of this company, but it was founded roughly 3 years ago. And since 2020, Emotive, which is fundamentally a conversation company. Right now, the main product is in text, but it really is a conversation company. And the whole goal is looking to humanize e-commerce. And that's something I'm really passionate about, because I don't know about you, I spend a lot of time on my phone. And if someone sends me a text that I didn't opt in for, or isn't a two-way conversation, it just infuriates me, because that's such a sacred space on my phone. So it's something I'm very passionate about, to make human, to give that best interaction. And there, the company was founded in LA and has had 466% revenue growth since 2020. And we've tripled in office size. We're just about to open up an office in Boston, which is why I'm very happy I came along to help out with that as well. So it's just The market is just ready for that. Standard examples from simple text blasts, I suppose you could say, typically have a 1 to 2 response rate. When you're having a human response, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later, you do have an 8-10+% response rate. Most customers that I've seen in my career as well, over the past 10 years, I've seen recently around 70-30%, maybe even more, is the comparison of desktop traffic on the lower end. And then on certain brands, 70-80% on mobile. So that's the place, the next step where we need to be playing in. And the final piece on Emotive as well, it's one of the biggest differentiators is we actually have a team who, yes, a lot of the text are two-way and there's automation built in. So would you like a discount? Yes, I would. That's all beautifully built out, silky smooth. But we actually have a team of shopping experts who can customize the response to customers. So if you ask a question like, oh, what's your shipping time like? We can automate those and actually have a person in touch response to those. So that's just a simple example, but it really highlights that human touch versus, sorry, email our support team, or just sending one-way texts that just are completely automated. So very, very exciting space. But yeah, I'd be more than happy to dive into anything you'd like in regards to what are the best tactics and strategies there, as I learned them myself as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I prefer, I often try and limit the emails that come into the inbox now. It's almost, I feel like I go through these stages of just unsubscribing. I just, you get to the point where I can't take any more emails in my inbox and it becomes unproductive. So I just kind of go through this, stage of unsubscribing. And, our phones, like you said, they're such a sacred kind of space now where, but we're living on our devices. My partner says I do it too much, but
as does mine. My wife always tells me that. So.
We're just everything we do now, from our internet banking to conversations to shopping, all of these things now are done on our devices. So, and I find that I'm taking even conversations off email straight into, say, WhatsApp or, Messenger or whatever it is. Just it's faster, it's more casual. And, I am enjoying that, but I am finding that instead of sitting down at the computer for a certain time of the day, I'm now, working different hours, more accessible, all of those different things. So I guess, to that point on, what are the sort of how do you do it in a way that's not obtrusive, that's welcomed, but not too much, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And that's one of the things why I was so excited to join Emotive, because their mission and they want to humanize e-commerce, their goals, like we spoke about earlier, building that great culture. And again, I'm very early stages, but everyone I've met has just been so passionate and bought into that message. And because your phone is so sacred, it's this is my personal space. How did you get my number? If brands are looking to communicate and delight their customers and potential customers, you have to do it in such a thoughtful way. And the only way, I think, to do that is obviously being respectful of somebody's time and space. So you must officially, and again, there are TCPA, Telephone and Consumer Protection Act, that I think was in 1991, in the US at least, that really says these are the limits and this is how you interact with people. So a lot of new software out there won't respect that. That's something that Emotive definitely does, but all brands should. You want to treat that relationship, it's so fragile. If I get a bad text from a brand, I do not want to hear from them ever again. It's like that whole example of, do you get a second chance? For me personally, absolutely not. I don't want to be blasted. Email's one thing because it's now saturated, but on my phone, that's the last stand. So again, I think proper opting in and knowing brands knowing how to use the software is very, very important. The next step is, how do you delight your customers? It's not just about giving those discounts, which I also love to buy my favorite products with those discounts that are provided to me directly. But having a two-way conversation is absolutely critical. If I had to highlight it or do almost like an analogy, it's that sales assistant who meets you when you come into a store, but it needs to be the digital version of that. A two-way conversation, somewhere to help you. If they're too close, go away, leave me alone, let me do my shopping, or give me the support that I need. So it's only just starting, but especially with COVID, especially in America, where we were in lockdown for a long period of time, most people were, it's just all these companies they were forced to sell online and take that conversation online. And I think that really pushed these markets into hyperdrive.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of feedback, so just following on from that, what are some of the ways that you think, I mean, we're having an interaction now with brands, and, within 5 minutes of hanging up the call or walking out of the store, you get a message, how did you, out of 1 to 10, how do you, the NPS question, right? So, what do you think, what's in your professional opinion, the best way to ask for feedback, and what are some of the examples of ways that you've done that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is an area that I love to talk about, by the way. It's my time at HubSpot in the past 2 years before I got the new job at Emotive. I was actually the person who reviewed our onboarding feedback. So Net Promoter Score, NPS, just like you said, or customer satisfaction survey, it's often called as well. I reviewed all that data globally. So whether it was, obviously, I only speak English. I don't speak and read and write in German, Spanish, Portuguese, all these beautiful languages. But I did see all the responses that came in globally for HubSpot for onboarding. And a lot of it was obviously overwhelmingly positive, but it's all about getting it at the right time. So in regards to onboarding finishes, needs to be communication saying, you will get this feedback survey. We'd love your unadulterated opinion, of course. And then that's completely automated in a very clean, short, sharp, sweet way to respond. And just to add on to the top of that as well, if you are very unhappy and you're giving that feedback and there's zero follow-up, it's like, oh, well, that just went into the abyss and no one's ever going to care. So managers, or it doesn't have to be managers, but someone at a company to follow up and say, hey, we heard your feedback. We're going to put this into place, or just some type of follow-up is really, really important. And it was very interesting seeing all the different scores globally. So for example, in Germany, a lot of the customers just spoke perfect English, better English than me. And they would say, this was one of the best onboarding experiences that I ever had, 8 out of 10. They would never go to 10. Where in Australia, it's like, oh, it was, we missed a few calls and it clearly wasn't a great experience, but we just give it 10. Like, it was okay, but 10, I absolutely love it. So you start to see those nuances in the different regions as well. But to your point, when is the best time? Definitely speaking to customers about when they feel comfortable getting those, but short, sharp, sweet, and very timely. Timely is the biggest piece, why it's fresh in the memory. So after onboarding is closed or a trial is finished, ideally that's the best time after the consumer's made a decision.
So it's not, I mean, this is the thing with reviews, right? And, with our business, with Brag Reviews, we're our sort of the best practice 101 is to, always kind of ask for that feedback at as many touch points as possible. And then if it is, if they do have a negative score and they're a detractor, then it's making that contact with them and saying, really sorry, we haven't met your expectations. How can we support and how can we fix it? Quite often you see companies that are surveying customers and then the result is a negative feedback and they just leave it. And then what's happening, one, if you don't ask for feedback, they go straight to reviews, right? And they're sure to tell the world about it. And two, then even worse, if you don't respond, then, that obviously aggravates them even a little bit more. So I think that's the real key, isn't it? It's just getting to them and either fixing it if expectations haven't been met, and giving them the opportunity to talk to them before they get aggravated and want to jump online and post a review.
Definitely. I think, and of course, you're the expert in this field. You see it day in and day out. And I think in the US, I've seen Google reviews are just so strong. There are just tens of thousands of reviews on the most silliest things you've ever seen in your life. There's reviews on them, like a wooden chair. There's a review saying, like, come on, people, this is a wooden chair, 10 out of 10, like 5 out of 5. I literally read that comment the other day. My wife and I were laughing about it. And I'm slowly seeing that come into Australia as well. Just for cafes as an example, go straight to Google reviews, and it's becoming more the norm. I've also seen customers, not from any particular company, but just people in the past, delete bad comments. oh, that doesn't look good, better get rid of that. You hit the nail on the head. You have to address it. And it's like, we apologize about that bad experience. Please let us know how we can do better. That it hurts at the time, but it's even worse if you leave it or delete it. It's going to come back worse.
Yeah. And I think it's really just an awareness thing, isn't it? Like, I know that, when we talk to businesses, they don't even know that they have reviews on some of these review sites, because when was the last time you just Google your own business? It's not something that you do quite often.
Yeah.
And so, the benefit of having visibility of your reviews is one, and that's where we come in with our software. But the second thing is knowing then how to manage that review. And when you get a negative feedback and they're a detractor for your business, it's like a stab to your heart, like it's personal. Yeah. So it's having the courage to confront that situation in a sympathetic or compassionate way. And, sometimes you can't meet expectations, right? Sometimes it's just unreasonable. But it's handling it in a way that you can walk away and, be confident that you've done everything that you can to support. So with at a HubSpot, what were some of the ways that you would manage your reviews with is that something that one person holds responsibility for, or is it a region? And then for negative reviews, as an example, you mentioned most of them are positive, but yeah, just keen to see how you managed those.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to have regional DRIs for not just for language purposes, but again, the cultural nuances. It's so important. I think it's what we did at HubSpot was very similar to that. We had DRIs who would see those responses and handle them. But again, detractors need to go into those straight away. As businesses, except you cannot keep everybody happy. Like you said, it's a knife to the heart because it's your personal business you poured everything into, but it's an inevitability. Look at Google. Themselves will have bad reviews. LinkedIn, all these amazing companies, Facebook will have these bad reviews. So just know that's going to happen, and how do you address it? And I love the fact that your software is doing that. It's kind of like a last pass for reviews, getting it all together so you can see it in a nice place and really build out that digital presence. At HubSpot, we had regional DRIs, direct response individuals. So, for example, if I was, obviously the bulk of customers for HubSpot are in the US, so I would review those as being a manager in the US at the time. And then we'd have a DRI in LATAM who was based in Bogota. So they would obviously help out with Spanish and Portuguese speaking customers. And then we had some talented, most of our team members in Europe as well, spoke several languages. I could never keep up with them. Just little old me speaking English, but then they would review all those different regions as well. And not only review them, but then give trends back to the appropriate onboarding teams to say, this is what we've seen in the past quarter. This is how we'd recommend we need to solve it. So not just getting the data, analyzing it, and then giving feedback for our product or our leadership team to action. And it's data, it's right there. So it's, the proof is in the pudding.
So it's not just getting the feedback, it's actually using them in the business to make decisions for improvements. Yeah.
Exactly right. Most of them were very much around communication as well. It's like, I didn't know who my next point of contact was. The expectation wasn't great between X sales rep and X onboarding specialist. The onboarding wasn't excellent. So there's all those lovely bits of information you can feed back. And it was really, really helpful. Again, it stings every time, but it's part of the business. It's even worse if we just brush it under the rug and not address it. And I think for small business owners as well, you're not alone. Everybody's in that same position. Definitely see how other companies are doing it, addressing it, because everybody has those reviews. Even detractors, neutrals, how can we push that neutral to a promoter? And then how do we delight our promoters? Every single person should hopefully be having a next step for.
And so when you look at that in terms of success for a business, because that's a key, I don't know if it was a KPI, but it's a key measurement for a business in terms of, where their customer satisfaction score, NPS score sits, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you find that's linked now to KPIs and bonuses for CX teams?
Yeah, it's so interesting because it depends who's on the other side. It can be so subjective. You could be onboarded in a certain way and you love it. You're like, I just want to speak to someone. I want to get in there. Then you catch me on the wrong day. And I'm like, I don't want to speak to anybody. Give me all the automation you've got. And straight away, two customers, the exact same size, are giving two different pieces of feedback. So we spoke about this a lot at HubSpot. We're speaking about it now at Emotive. Like, what is the fair way? It's definitely a KPI. So the question, if you want to break it specifically, is it a performance metric that people's bonuses, promotions are held to? Fair reason to say that should be, because it's a huge part of the business. How has people's experiences been with you? You're in customer success. This should be a great experience. You're in onboarding as well. Or is it going to be a coaching metric? So yes, we're going to review it. How could we have done differently? What's the situation? How can we address it? But it's not actually pertaining to your promotion. A lot of different companies do it in different ways. It's quite interesting. Should it be coaching? So it's like, I can take that bit of feedback, I can action it, or is it you need to hit this? But it's very subjective on who you get. It's very tough. I don't have an exact answer of what's the right way to go about it.
Yes, it's a new space really for us to navigate, isn't it?
Exactly. And then it comes down to someone didn't, say a customer in his example didn't do any work, and now I have to push back on them as their onboarding specialist. They're not going to like that. That's going to impact my response, my NPS, my customer satisfaction survey, but their results and usage and their return is going to be here. So I'm playing that game between, I want you to like me, but I want you to respect me as a business partner. So we would often see that dip. It's like, I got along with them, but they were such a good professional. We got so much results. So I really like my onboarding specialist, but I didn't do my homework. I didn't do this. We didn't make as much progress. So it really is that balancing match. Yeah,
that's awesome. You shared with me the culture code that HubSpot have, and I think it's a really good high to finish on. Just thinking about that, we talked about the customer-centric business and the culture that you can create that has that real commitment, for the whole team, throughout the whole organization. I did some research on the culture code, and it was really inspiring, and it was one of the reasons, obviously, that you joined the company. Can you share a little bit more on that with us?
Yeah, of course. My previous company before HubSpot, I had so many great connections there, really cut my teeth and learn how to be a professional straight out of uni. And I enjoyed the work. I learned so much. I'm so grateful to everybody there. But when I found the culture code for HubSpot, I don't think I'd ever been inspired. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I love the old company, but I'd never been inspired by a mission before. And I was, getting into my adulthood and becoming a bit more wary about those things. But as soon as I read the culture code, which I think is sitting on 5.7 million views, and again, this was just created by Dharmesh Shah, one of the founders of HubSpot. This wasn't trying to bring in people. Ironically, it's actually been one of the biggest inbound recruiting magnets HubSpot could have ever planned, but he didn't build that. His intention was to build a company with the set of culture code that everyone can adhere to. I read it and I was like, I must work for this company. I remember specifically thinking that, saying, I need to work for this company. I don't care what I do. And I actually emailed him. I was still living in Sydney at the time. And it would have been 2, 3 a.m. in Boston. Because he's like, email me. I'm like, kind of like an NPS. I'm like, no one's going to respond to this. I emailed him and he actually wrote back within, I think, about 45 minutes saying, Brent, it definitely wasn't an auto reply. I asked him after it later when I was living here. I'm sure he can remember. But it was like, Brent, I'm so happy that it connected with you and it's, in Australia and you're reading this thing. It makes it really, really, special for us that it's reaching this far. And from then I was like, I must work at this company. And it was such a passionate thing. And that's not the first. So many HubSpotters you'd speak to, obviously me as an ex-HubSpotter, I'm so passionate about it. So many people have had the same experience. And I think that's, again, not intentionally, but that is one of the biggest inbound recruitment magnets HubSpot now has globally. And it was created from such an innocent place. So,
and that's not the intention they ever had with it, right? They built that culture statement for their internal purposes and then thought, hey, let's just publish this and share it, with our customers. And now they even have a template that you can download to create your own. I mean,
exactly. It's not a competitive advantage. It's how business should be conducted. You should bring your whole self to work. You should be able to rely on your teammates, which a lot of companies do, but the way they surfaced it is just, it was phenomenal. It inspired a young professional in me when I was reading it.
That's awesome. So is there anything else that you kind of want to share with our audience, in terms of, reviews, feedback, onboarding, all of the amazing topics that we've covered today?
Yeah, again, anyone out there, I'd love to connect with you and have a discussion about this. But I think obviously looking to your company for advice, I haven't really seen another company. That's why I'm so happy to be on this podcast that's doing this, because like you said, it's so new. We'll get more customers, we'll do this, but you need to treat your existing and past customers just as good as your future customers. So onboarding, the customer experience, most of the times you only get one try at it. So you have to think about it ahead of time and be prepared for it. You may not get ideal reviews at the time, but how are you going to act after getting that? But it is, it's a special thing to build that relationship with the customer. So I'm so happy we covered a lot of topics that dived into it, but being prepared, being planned, seeing what your competitors are doing, and also getting advice in the industry, I think is just a great place to start.
So did you often have, for yourself throughout your career, do you have mentors that you've kind of have helped sort of coach you along the way?
Yeah, definitely. I got given great advice at HubSpot and my previous company, as well as Emotive. They actually have a built-in outside of Emotive mentor plans. Like, you should have a mentor in Emotive, but also having an industry expert outside, and they can potentially facilitate that through their networks, which I think is it's very, very great. My boss, Adam Wade, who's the chief customer officer of Emotive, he told me that in my first week, getting the mentorship, getting you that support, which I think was really powerful. A few different mentors in the industry. Julie Hogan was probably one of the biggest ones. I can't remember her title now. She's the VP of Enablement, I believe, at Toast. She's done amazing things in her career. She actually hired me at HubSpot. Tim Cormier, another great guide from America, working at HubSpot as well, giving me that coaching advice about this new job as well. I was never in software. I was never in SaaS before. So it doesn't matter where you are in your career, you can always enter it and experience if that's something you want to get into as well. So external mentors outside the current workspace have just been absolutely phenomenal for me.
Oh, that's awesome. And always learning, right?
Always. They're still learning. And then I'm sort of like trickle down effect, and they can teach me, then I can teach people I'm mentoring. It's definitely given me guidance in my career, which I'll always be thankful for.
Thank you so much, Brent. I've loved chatting to you. I feel like we could talk for hours. Maybe we can come back and do part two.
If you'll have me anytime. I'll stay up late this time, so you don't have to get up super early. Hopefully there's not a huge thunderstorm rolling through Boston. I hope that didn't touch on the audio.
No, it just sounded like a plane.
Yeah, maybe it was a plane. No, it was definitely a thunderstorm. But I appreciate it, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, Brent. And I'll make sure for our listeners that I can put some notes on how to connect with you.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
The Brag Effect is brought to you by Brag Reviews, the review management software that helps businesses improve their reputations, one review at a time. Check it out at bragreviews.com.